There's a big unification fight this weekend with Chris Billam-Smith fighting at cruiserweight versus Gilberto Ramirez. We're going to talk with Chris Billam-Smith, but for our fans who are not familiar with him, why is he a talent to watch in the 200-pound weight class?
With all the respect in the world, and I've said this to Chris before, he's somebody who has, as some people would say, has overachieved. He was probably meant to win a British title, and maybe he was meant to go on and step up to European level and win a European title. I don't think there's many people 3 years ago, 4 years ago, who would have said, cool, that Chris Billam-Smith, he's going to be the next cruiserweight champion of the world. But the way that he has conducted himself, the ultimate professional that he is, and the way that he fights as well, he's so bloody entertaining. It's ridiculous, which can't be good for you. It can't be good for you at all. I've never seen him in a boring fight. And I covered his fight against Isaac Chamberlain in Bournemouth, which is his hometown. And that fight won British Boxing Board of Control Fight of the Year because Chris Billam-Smith is always in a good fight. And what I also like about him is the different distances that he can fight at. And what I mean by that is he's quite happy to sit on your chest and drive uppercuts up the middle of the guard and rough you up and tie you up and give you a hard night's work. But on the other hand, he's also pretty happy to fight at mid-range and throw unforgiving, vicious, malicious straight shots and hooks, long hooks over and over again. And he's accurate as well. He trains with a very good team in Shane McGuigan and all of the guys who box out of that gym, like the likes of Adam Azim, being one of them, one of the fighters which we spoke about fairly recently. Ellie Scotney's another fighter in that gym. He's surrounded by good people. And I know they shouldn't come into it, but he's a bloody good guy. He's a really, really nice guy. I took my sons up to an amateur competition in the Midlands of England, and as I was walking into it was a leisure centre where the boxing was taking place. Chris had spotted me and he shouted my name, so I stopped and had a chat with him, and like I said, I had my two sons with me. And immediately, straight down to their level. All right, boys, nice to meet you. Chatting away to him, and he's just such a humble guy. And I can't help I can't help wanting him to do well and wanting him to do bigger and better and greater things. Not just because he's British, but because he's a decent chap as well. What do you know about him as an American?
He's been featured, or at least he was recently featured on Peacock, which is the streaming service owned by NBC. So he's getting a little bit of a greater awareness among some boxing fans, but I think that this is going to really potentially be more of his coming out party. He's in the headline of this major attraction that will be on DAZN that a lot of people can see. And this is a potentially good action fight with Gilberto Ramirez. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs and what happens with him both in the UK and beyond. So let's hear what Chris had to say to us about this fight and what he wants to do afterward. Chris, thank you again for joining us. I am really big on the whole life story or life journey. I just feel like this past year and a half has been an incredible whirlwind, at least from my perspective. What has it been like for you?
Yeah, exactly that. It's been a long sort of 15 years of work come to fruition and really pay off these last 18 months. I've always lived the life of a boxer, and as a professional athlete, even when I was an amateur, I was always looking for more. So it's really nice now. It's all come to fruition, and it's been a really enjoyable 18 months.
I know sometimes we hear of boxers who get a world title, and that world title instills an extra sense of confidence in their skills. Have you changed as a result of winning the world championship a year and a half ago?
I'd say confidence is there for sure. I'd say you always have the confidence that you can do it, but you can never truly believe until you're there and you've done it. And I always believed I could do it, and I am sort of the fighter I have been over the last 18 months, and still more to improve on. But yeah, I feel like that. Yeah, just getting over the line and actually doing it, having that just really instills that confidence.
What do you feel like you still need to improve on?
Oh, lots of things. There's lots of things I need to improve on. Yeah, there's in every area I can improve. There's always percentages somewhere, and I'm always looking for them.
You've been in some tough fights over the course of this past year and a half. How would you say those fights have helped prepare you for a fight of this magnitude on a stage as big as this?
Yeah, I think the experience I've had headlining in my hometown football stadium, the team I support, that was huge pressure, and then going away to an opponent's football stadium and being the underdog there as well, and having to perform and do that's been really good. So it's kind of it's weird to say, but the career side of me and the boxer side of me is like, oh, this is what this is work now. This is just what it is, and this is normal. But then, when I step out and look at it from, you know, teenage me and looks at it and go, wow, you've come a long way. But there's obviously always lots of pressure on, but I've always thrived under pressure and loved that. I always wanted the pressure to be on me, even as a kid. Taking penalties for a team, I'd love that pressure. I've always be the one to put my hand up first and try and take it. So I've always just thrived under pressure. So the bigger the stage, the better.
On a related note, the fights that you've actually been in, like with Chamberlain, with Oakley, with Masternak, how have those prepared you for the level of difficulty that you're facing now?
Yeah, I think they all have their merit. Obviously, Zerdo is very different stylistically, but just in terms of the preparation, having to overcome different styles. You got someone in Chamberlain who's a bit more flat-footed and but slicker, and then you got Lawrence who can move really well and has got huge long levers and can really punch. And then you got Masternak who moves his feet really well and puts his shots together. So they're all different styles, and it's just adapting to all those different styles all the time, and that just keeps your brain ticking. It's been the same this camp. Obviously, sparring southpaws for this camp, and that keeps your brain ticking and having to adapt. So it's just knowing that you can adjust to different styles helps. When you come up against another style now, like I've got with Zerdo.
I was reading an interview that you'd done about Zerdo, and you spoke very respectfully of him. Why do you hold him in what I think is pretty high regard?
Um, what he's achieved, to have 47 fights and 46 wins, and your only loss be to Dimitri Bivol, having won a world title at two different weights, is you don't get there by luck. You get there with a lot of hard work and skill and all the other attributes that you need to become a champion and stay one and compete at that top level. He's got some great names on his record. He's beaten a long-standing champion at cruiserweight in Gilberto Ramirez. So yeah, and the fact he's only losses to Dimitri Bivol, who's obviously a very, very skilled operator and one of the best of this generation, then I think you have to respect that. And when I watch him, he's got a lot of different skills. He ticks a huge amount of boxes. There's not really anything he doesn't do very well. He's a very well-rounded boxer. There's not any glaring weaknesses there. So yeah, that's why I respect him.
You stand about the same height, but obviously he's coming up from lighter weight classes. Do you think that size will at all be a factor in this fight?
I think so. I think I'll be more natural at the weight and a lot fuller and muscular at the weight and stronger at the weight than he will. I think I've just been at this weight for so long now, and over the last few years, really grown into the weight and felt a lot stronger at the weight. Whereas he's obviously come up and he's probably a bit fleshier and stuff like that. And I just felt in his presence, I felt like he was a slightly smaller man. He doesn't look it as such, but he just felt smaller than me. And I just feel like I'll be the bigger man in there on the night.
I imagine you'd also say that size is not the only reason that you'll beat him. What else do you feel like you bring to the table that is too good or too much for Zerto?
Just the intensity that I fight at, it's a grueling intensity. A lot of people come in and spar me, and they think they're going to be absolutely fine, and then they get in the ring with me, and after a couple of rounds, they're like, "Wow, this is a pace." And I'll have 3 different sparring partners that are doing 4 rounds each, and they need a breather after the third and fourth round. So they want to get out then, and I'm staying in there and doing the same with the next guy and the next guy. So I've got a really, really good fitness level, and in good fight intensity. I'm always working for every second, every round.
We started off this interview and I was talking about how I like stories. And I think about how outside of boxing, people might achieve a certain thing in life and then they set their goal for the next thing. What is it that's really driving and motivating you now that you've accomplished what you've accomplished?
Well, I've obviously won 1 world title, and there's 4, so there's more to collect. There's a kind of a legacy at stake. I mean, this weekend alone, I'll be the first Brit since David Haye to unify the cruiserweight division, which should be a great honor. I really respected David's boxing. I used to watch him and admire him. And he actually beat Jean-Marc Mormec on the day of my first amateur fight, which is just 17 years ago the other day. So it's weird, a very strange link that I'd be the next British cruiserweight to unify. So it's a nice touch. But yeah, lots of driving factors in that, and then obviously my family, and they're just to do them proud, and my young son Frank, bring him home more belts, and and more things to look at, and be proud of me when he's older.
I know fighters don't like to look beyond the fight immediately in front of him, but does that mean that you are looking to stick around cruiserweight for some time and that Opetaia would hopefully be next?
Yeah, that's the plan. Obviously got a tough task in my hand on Saturday, but for me, that they're my next 2 fights would be Zerda and then Jai Opetaia.
What kind of challenge do you feel that Opetaia would present for you?
Yeah, challenge, obviously another southpaw, but also different type of southpaw to Zerda. But yeah, I've studied him, but not studied him too intently in terms of, especially at this stage, because obviously got a very different style in front of me on Saturday.
It's great to see the attention coming back to cruiserweight. I don't know how closely you followed the division. Obviously, you did mention David Haye, but for so long, it felt like cruiserweight was like a way station on the way to other weight classes. Do you see yourself eventually moving up to a bridgerweight or a heavyweight?
No, it's hard. I like to look ahead and have goals, but I never look too far ahead. And I think because there's still 3 more belts to collect, I would never look that far ahead. But never say never. But I can't see it happening. But I think you're right. Cruiserweight is getting more attention now over the last sort of 5 years or so, which is great. But it's just purely because of the name of the weight. Because if people watch the fights and they think about what weight it is, it's the same weight Muhammad Ali was. Right? I probably get in the ring maybe heavier than Muhammad Ali got in the ring. He used to box around 15 and a half stone as a heavyweight. So they produce exciting fights because you've still got the power and the speed and the skill there. Whereas the heavyweights sometimes it's just some just big superhuman men that are hitting each other, which people obviously like to see the knockouts and stuff. But yeah, it's great to see cruiserweight getting some rep.
What weight do you walk around at, and how is making weight for you?
Yeah, making weight's fine. I don't balloon up. Probably the heaviest I go ever is probably 9 kilos overweight. So I'm not. I've sort of grown into the weight throughout my career, so it's never been too bad. And I like to keep in shape and stuff. So making weights, it's always there's always an effort involved, but it's comfortable.
So there's no temptation to follow the lead of a David Haye or an Alexander Usyk and go up to heavyweight?
No, not really at the moment. Like I said, I've got a lot to achieve at cruiserweight.
I know you've been doing these interviews all day and you probably get asked a lot of the same questions. What do you wish that we would ask you that you haven't been asked?
To be fair, I did most of mine yesterday, I think, and then I've only had a couple today. So that's a good question. Who knows? I get asked a lot of varying questions, to be fair. And I do enjoy the interviews. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. There's always like now and again you'll get like, tell us something people don't know about you. And I'd always have an answer for it, but I could never remember. Like when I don't get asked it, I can remember a good answer for it. But then when I get asked it, I forget what my good answer would have been. So I can't even give you that right now. Yeah, no, there's nothing on top of my head that I can think of.
This is a fight playing in front of an international audience, and I'm with a podcast that is both for UK and US boxing fans. For people who are not as familiar with you as they should be, what should they expect to see when they see you in the ring for the first or the second time?
Entertainment. It's always entertaining. It's not. I wouldn't call it a slick style. Like some people like the pure science of boxing, but it's an excitement and an entertainment always. And I bring relentlessness and punch power, good inside fighting, good speed, and a heart like no other.
Well, it's nice to get to know you. Thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Cheers, David. Take care.
Obviously, the lineal and IBF champion at cruiserweight is Jai Opetaia. Is that the fight that you most want to see next for the winner, whether that is Billam-Smith or Ramirez?
Yeah, that is a fight which has to happen, and I think it's a fight which I think all three of them have got on their minds, haven't they? In terms of money for the cruiserweight division, but Chris obviously, because he's been making little digs at Jai Opetaia, and Jai Opetaia has been saying things himself. But I know what sort of professional Chris is, and although those conversations and those little moments have happened, he will be thinking about one thing, and that is winning on Saturday night in Saudi Arabia. And I think he can do it. And the reason I think he can do it is because of all the things that I said before we got into the interview. But there's a reason that fighters are paced throughout their career. And if they're paced right and they're matched right, that helps them get to the highest point that they possibly can. And when I look at some of the fights which Chris has had, he has steadily just gone up a level of opponent each and every fight. There might have been the odd one where he might have, maybe it didn't go up or down, and maybe it stayed a little bit level. But like the Isaac Chamberlain fight, I said, he would have learned so much about that 12-round slugfest of how deep he can go. And then he had a tough opponent in Arman Jojai, who he knocked out in the 5th round, and I think he broke his ribs in the end. And then he had that difficult night with Lawrence Okoli. I was there at the Vitality Stadium in Bournemouth, and Lawrence made his life hell, just tying him up and being really awkward. So it's another thing which Chris had to overcome. And then, of course, his most recent one was against Richard Riakporhe, where he showed the sort of balls which he had to go to an away ground. And I say an away ground because it was at Richard Riakporhe's home football stadium, Crystal Palace. And then he put on, maybe a masterclass is a bit too much of a compliment, but he put on a really good show and he won that comfortably on the cards. So that apprenticeship, that journey on the way to this fight will serve Chris well. And I think that he'll get the job done on Saturday, and then he'll start shouting about Jai Opetaia. I take it that's the fight you want to see.
Of course. It is the fight, and going from a unification fight into another unification fight en route to hopefully potentially having an undisputed champion would be great. You mentioned the apprenticeship. It's been a really amazing whirlwind this past year and a half. Even that Masternak fight, Billam-Smith was losing at the time when he came back and stopped Masternak with the body shots. That Riakporhe fight, that was a rematch, and Billam-Smith avenged his previous loss. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because Gilberto Ramirez has his own aspirations for greatness. It's been really cool to see what he himself has done. He started off at middleweight. I'm wondering how he's going to be doing against cruiserweights. He did capture a world title some time ago at super middleweight, went up to 175, lost to Dimitri Bivol. So now here he is at 200, and he beat Arslan Goulamirian for a world title early in the year. This is not a given for either guy. I do think that Ramirez has grown into his 6'2" frame, but it could be a potential challenge. Ramirez is teasing that he might want to move up to heavyweight a little bit later on. Let's see how he does against Billam-Smith first. Either way, this is going to be an action fight. And there's some very good fights on the undercard as well. Going